I wanted to welcome you here, and I know this is your alma mater as well, so coming back
Yeah, thanks for calling me doctor.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, well, I thought in the academic environment that we're in, we should recognise that.
I've been to Imperial College a few times recently, and I had the privilege of introducing President Macron to do a speech there when he joined the state visit. And they introduced me as Dr. Peter Kyle, and nobody ever recognises the title, ever. And I was so shocked that somebody actually recognised it. I was completely wrong-footed when I got on stage. But anyway, thank you very much.
I should have asked you a follow-up question.
I nearly killed myself in this place. And can I just say to Sasha, this Gardner Arts is looking amazing, or whatever it's called, the Attenborough Centre now, isn't it? Quite rightly too, but it's looking amazing compared to when I was here.
Progress.
It wasn't my fault that it wasn't looking nice, by the way, back then. But this is beautiful. There we are, over there. Yeah. It is.
I think you might volunteer for some kind of alumni engagement.
Don't worry, they get there.
So brilliant. So one of the kind of really interesting things that we've seen as you move from DSIT into DBT is you're bringing that knowledge, that understanding of actually the role of AI to drive economic growth into DBT. And we're really reassured by that because we know now that we have someone there who's an ally for this industry. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you more broadly, how do you see the role of innovation and growth being able to power economic growth? And what plans do you have to be able to put that at the centre of what you're doing?
Okay, just a small question then to start.
Sorry.
but no, it's true. I wasn't expecting to get moved in the reshuffle. I was absolutely convinced I would have bet my flat on not moving. And I'd expected to see a lot of the AI Opportunities Action Plan and a whole bunch of other things I'd got off the ground there through. But there is such a link between the two jobs. And that was what Keir had in mind when he moved me. And of course, Liz coming in, who has a real passion for this area, but also in a Venn diagram, the bit in the middle between the two departments is large. And what we're doing is squeezing them together, actually. So there'll be a lot more overlap and collaboration between the two departments. I've never known a company or a charity, any organisation, get its way out of financial crisis or any kind of organisational crisis without innovating its way out. And if you look at Apple when Steve Jobs came back, they were 90 days from insolvency. What he didn't just sit back and say, what can I cut? What can I sort of, how can I just sort of like just shrink the company? He threw everything at innovation. And I'm not saying that, I'm not comparing myself or any other member of this government to Steve Jobs, but the fact remains, and there's nothing different with government than there is with an organisation in that situation. We have inherited a situation where we inherited a growth emergency, that we have high taxes, low growth, and it's been happening for so long that it's become that cycle, that pattern has become structurally embedded into our economy, and we've got to shock our way out of it. So what we've done in the first year, even though all of the focus and the media attention has been on some of the restraints and the cuts and some of the financial restraint that we've had in order to get control of the public finances again, what people haven't commented enough on is the fact that we've increased our R&D budget as a government by 11%, which means over this spending review period, it's now up to £86 billion. So UKRI, Innovate UK and ARIA, the high reward, high risk funding body within DSIT, these are all of them received significant uplifts and also being reorientated towards the high growth sectors, AI being front and centre. And then moving into DBT, we've got the British Business Bank and a whole series of other funding bodies. What we're doing now in a more concerted way is joining up, because you can't have a disjoint between where the innovation is created from where the spin out and the scale up in particular needs to be much more fluid. And just as people who are experiencing public services in their daily lives shouldn't see government as a series of different departments for which you fit into, you should see government and support as one thing. The same goes for the way we treat businesses. So you're going to see a lot more coordination, strategic thinking that crosses from the way innovation is supported to the way that scale up in particular is supported, and those key bits in the middle. And those are the nature of the conversations we're having at the moment. There is a wave of economic change and societal change that is sweeping the world because of AI. We cannot stop it coming to Britain, but what we can do is use the agency of government to shape it and shape how it unfolds and the way it unfolds in our country. And the AI Opportunities Action Plan shows how regionally and area-based development we're using from it. We can control the skills that we have in order to seize it. We can do our best to partner with businesses so that you can seize the opportunities out there. And then also, there is a lot of negative disruption out there in the economy. The rise of China, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the energy price shock that swept the world, America's tariff regime, which changes very rapidly. All of these things create instability, but the best businesses find ways of seeing potential in unstable times. And you see businesses breaking through. And that is the approach that I am very, very stridently trying to bring into government itself. You've seen the way that Keir struck the deal with Trump very early on. You've seen some of the other ways we've exploited the opportunities with the US amidst the uncertainty. The Trump state visit brought £150 billion worth of investment into the UK, but created £300 billion worth of commercial opportunities for exchange between the two countries. So you will see a lot more fleet of foot, you will see a lot more sense of urgency, boldness, and creativity, and the risk profile going up with me.
Yeah.
And that's I think, the approach that you will increasingly see from this government going forward. And if you want shorter answers, you've got to ask shorter questions. You've got to ask more narrow questions.
Yes, no questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Those questions. Well, that's great. I said it in the preamble. It's reassuring to have you moving into this role, and I think you just actually shown us why that is reassuring. To have that sort of connection between the understanding of AI and its role going into that new department now. Thank you for giving us the national context there as well. But we're talking about regional growth. I wanted to understand how you think here in the Southeast and in this area in particular, government can support the growth of local businesses, SMEs, and the clusters, the ecosystem around the university and the towns here as well.
Yeah, well, you've seen some organisational changes. We're creating a mayor for Sussex, and I think that will give a lot more strategic clout. I think in both jobs I've had in government, partnering with regional mayors has been a real dream, actually, a real opportunity for central government to add area-based investment. So, last week I did a regional investment summit up in the West Midlands with Richard Parker, the mayor for the West Midlands, and it wouldn't have happened without him. It simply wouldn't have done. And what he's able to do is work with local authorities around his area. He is incredibly diligent. He is very persistent. He is completely unignorable for people like me. And which is why we went there. And that was £10 billion worth of investment. But crucially, on top of that, I was able to announce £1 billion worth of deregulation that will hit our economy this year, £233 million worth of deregulation when it comes to company reporting, which I can do without legislation and is now going to be straight away. And that's going to disproportionately impact SMEs. So therefore, having a disproportionate positive benefit here in our region, because we have a disproportionate number of smaller businesses and this constant need to over-report. When I got into this job it was a month ago today, I think it was, I got the job. And but knowing that people are running coffee shops in George Street in Hove, having to write inordinate amounts of information, which nobody would ever read, which has very little bearing to the running of that specific small business. Well, that's just gone now, and I think will have a really positive benefit. So government can do a lot of things like that. We only know it from listening. It's interesting listening to Lawrence talk about having data centres by sewage works. I've never heard that before, and some people will be shocked that I'm so immersed in the AI world that doing my previous role at DCIT and doing the AI Opportunities Action Plan and having to tackle issues like water and energy and setting up the AI Energy Council with Ed Miliband to try and tackle that thing, working very closely with the DEFRA teams on it, that's never come up. But the key thing that I want to say to all of you is that sometimes people sit there and think that politicians are useless and simultaneously know everything. And we're sort of in the middle, and on different subjects, we're at different points on the spectrum. But we only know things if either we proactively go out and learn things, or we're informed about things. And very often we have an outstanding system in government. The civil service are outstanding, and I mean, the team in DBT, since I got in, oh my God, what they've had to deal with me and the workload that came with me, and having to go to Washington and do negotiations 24 hours into the job, and then fly direct from Washington to Beijing and undertake the first trade negotiations for 7 years between our two nations with the vice premier of China, and that was on my third day in the job. And then the Trump visit, and then Labour conference, all the while JLR, and having to put together, one of our biggest support packages ever. And I got that together in a very short space of time. The DBT team is outstanding, but we only know what comes into us by either proactively going out there or being told. And there are people who sit on all sorts of wisdom and insight that doesn't get to me, and that's a shame. So people, particularly if you're living locally, there's lots of ways of getting things onto my radar. It does not mean that every time you have a good idea that suddenly that's going to become government policy the next day, which some people seem to believe. But it does mean that I'm able to learn and bring it into the work I do both locally and nationally.
Great, thank you. And as a small business owner, thank you for the deregulation work that you've been pushing through, because you're right. I mean, that's the last thing you want to think about as a small business, is having to deal with all that red tape.
And my promise to you is that is just the start. That was 2 weeks' work. And that's the thing that I find astonishing, is because we've just had 14 years of bonfires of bureaucracy and red tape, and we left the EU so we could unshackle ourselves from it. And in 2 weeks of having several meetings with officials and getting my regulation team in and just going through and things, we came up with £233 million in 1 year. So by the time between now and the next election, that's £1 billion. And what does that mean for people? That is 200 hours. What we announced last week, 200 hours of work for every business. Wow. 200 hours, and it's disproportionately positively benefiting. Now, so I go home and I'm thinking, that's a pretty good day's work. Yeah. I think I'm about to announce that, and that's going to impact so many businesses. And then you think, how did it last so long? How did that stay on, in policy for so long? So once you start that thinking within a department, my challenge is then to keep the energy up, so that sort of zeal and that the excitement that's created from doing that kind of work sustains itself, but crucially goes further. And we have this culture where hopefully I can be the one that's sort of saying to officials, oh my God, calm down, that's a bit too far, rather than always being the person that says, that's interesting, go further. Why only 80 hours? Why can't we go for 200 hours worth of bureaucracy?
Amazing.
And that's where I hope we can get to.
And that will pay back so much in terms of allowing those companies then to find the time to do more marketing, to hire more people.
Work with customers, relationships, staff, building teams and shaping culture. FaceTime with customers if you're a retailer. All these things you should be doing. 200 hours is a lot of time in a year to be doing things that directly benefit commercial activity.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you for that. The other part of that it's going to free up time for as well is skills and development. And I wanted to kind of ask you about this. When I saw you with Liz Kendall at Imperial, I was struck by how you were talking
That's
about...
where you got the doctor thing from, wasn't it?
It is, yeah. I have to admit that. But it was
Sasha, it wasn't from you. I'm very disappointed.
But at Imperial, it was wonderful to see the way in which you and Liz Kendall were talking about sort of a partnership. And I know that Liz Kendall is very kind of focused, passionate about skills as well.
She is. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, how can we actually ensure that we're getting the right skills, particularly into this region, both the technical and the everyday skills to be able to support the growth which we need?
And this is where AI is going to be transformative. It's going to be amazing. I mean, I've quite a profound barrier to learning with the dyslexia that I have, and I found AI one of the most amazing things when you're using some of the chatbots, and I'm asking it about just things I'm just trying to learn. Thanks to Sussex University, it unlocked a huge love of learning for me, and which I hadn't really previously had. And so when I'm sitting at the weekend, the thing that really strikes me is when you interact with it and you ask it to phrase things in different ways or to structure sentences in certain ways for you, because that's the way you learn, it so rapidly adapts to the way that I consume information. I mean, incredibly rapidly. And that's the great thing about this era of learning that we're embarking on. Because if people who are 35 are using AI double the amount of people who are over 55, the amount of time it takes to close that gap is a 2-hour training session. And that's because you're not teaching a programming language. You're not teaching somebody to play something. You don't have to learn a foundational language in order to therefore go ahead and then start doing the things that creatively to build on top of it. By learning how AI works and how prompts work, what it can and can't do, and how you personally can interact with it, the AI very quickly takes over and then becomes the learning tool and teacher for you. Now, couple that with what you're going to get at higher education, what you're going to get at different formal points, and what you're going to get also in a decent workplace these days, and how it's going to complement your work in the workplace, how it is going to complement your personal life outside of the workplace, then AI is going to be a remarkable tool. So the skills needed to capture and succeed and flourish in the AI age is going to be very different than it is in the previous age, where you go to a night school and you learn one specific topic if you're an adult, and then you go back and do it again, or you're doing professional training in workplace. It's going to be a very, very different experience learning, and it could be completely exhilarating and very, very leveling from people from different backgrounds who have different vocabularies. For people who don't have the kind of high sort of range of vocabulary, so sometimes will find formal learning difficult. Having sort of AI as a sort of a side tutor is going to be completely remarkable. And I think people who make their way into public life because of our own the usual pathways into public life and policy making, simply don't comprehend that aspect of AI. And I say all that because I think down here in the Southeast, we will benefit massively from this. And if businesses, the micro and small businesses, start to get and harness the power of AI, it will be completely transformative. And just very directly on the economy of the Southeast, my frustration has always been that we are seen, because we are the most productive part of the economy geographically, that policymakers always sort of think one or two things. Firstly, it's job done. Or secondly, we don't want to do more here because we don't want to sort of increase where it's already doing really well, when there are parts of the country which are doing less well. Therefore, focus everything elsewhere. And I think both of those are misguided, because there is still so much more potential from the economy in the Southeast, and we shouldn't cap potential wherever it exists in the country. And there are very specific regional development challenges we've had elsewhere, and that is a scar on our country that we've allowed it to persist so long, but they should be taken in isolation. And I think AI infrastructure, the skills, the wealth that will be created, the scientific discovery, government can shape where this geographically impacts the most, and we should use that agency to the max, which I did and still doing. But here in the Southeast, we have these great assets. We've got New Haven Port, we've got Shoreham Port, we've got the economy of Brighton and Hove, and we've got Gatwick Airport. And each of these assets sees itself in relation directly to London. They don't look inwards and think, how do we actually work together as an economy inwards? The Brighton and Hove economy is a very closed economy. There's 38,000 people that leave the city every day to commute. There's lots of people come in to buy and shop. There's a lot of commercial activity that happens online now. But if you're living in Eastbourne, if you're in Worthing, Littlehampton and Bognor, very few people are coming into Brighton. It's not an open economy for the people who are living along the coast. And I think that's something that we should really be thinking about very deeply.
And part of that is getting investment into the area as well. I mean, being able to frame this as a region. You've already talked about the importance of having a mayor to oversee all of that. Yeah. But what other things need to happen to really be able to bring to life that ecosystem that you described there, and to get, importantly, the investment into companies, startups, all of the infrastructure that's going to be necessary?
Everything for me needs to be hung together by leadership, and I think that's why the mayoral system has the potential. I'm not saying that we need to get the right mayor in place, and we need to get the right. It needs to bed in. But we have a huge opportunity there, because you can have great assets, but if they're not coordinated and they're not adding up to more than some of its parts, and I think that's what I'm trying to say, is that in our area, I don't see all of the assets that we have properly adding up to more than some of its parts, and also just flying independent of what's happening in London. And when I go to other regions, Northeast, for example, the Northeast has lots of assets, and they are really looking together as a set of assets from universities through to the local authorities, through to employers, like Nissan and some of the other employers in the area. Now, that's a very different set of assets than we have down here, but I think the principle remains the same. So there is a lot the government can do. We do invest, heavily down here. I think Brighton and Hove as a city has been underinvested in. We got disproportionately clobbered during the austerity period. Our local authorities' budget fell by more than half. And you take 50% of the revenue out of any organisation, and you're going to have difficulties. And that's what we experienced in this city. And when a city or any organisation goes into shock like that, it becomes very inward-facing. But I think Bella and the team have been outstanding. We are tackling some of the revenue challenges that we've had. So there's a lot more opportunity now to start partnering between public and private sectors and different sectors to really start going. But I am resting quite a lot of stock on having leadership. And I've spoken to Sasha and others locally, and I really, there is no one that is more passionate about the role of higher education than I am. I think Brighton and Hove is Brighton and Hove because of having two universities. Why have we not taken some of the characteristics of other towns and cities? We haven't been a city very long, along the coast, not just the south coast, but other coastal towns and cities. We've become what we're famous for or known for, socially and economically, predominantly now, because we have two universities, incredibly important drivers of growth and a sense of identity of a city. And I really hope that universities, and I'm not talking about Sussex in singularity here, but I really hope that universities going forward can play a much more forward-facing role in the leadership of cities, because I think there's no organisation that's better placed to get bums on seats, as we've seen here, to facilitate relationships between public and private that can spin out new innovations, which often come from within universities themselves. We look at Contexa and some of the other work we're doing for the quantum labs here. The AI lab at Sussex was set up, I think, in 1964. Talk about being ahead of the game. Yeah. And all these sorts of things, all through collaborations and partnerships between private and public. It's so well placed to play an overt leadership role in a city, in a region, and an economy. And I'm increasingly encouraging, where appropriate, universities to start filling in that role. Yeah, I was particularly interested in the idea of a quantum Silicon Valley that Sasha mentioned before, and an opportunity for this area. And to your point, that builds upon that partnership between local businesses, university, and government to be able to come together. You touched upon that sort of partnership. I wanted to sort of get your thoughts on how businesses can get more involved with government at a national and regional level to help shape that policy. We've got a number of UK AI members in the audience here who are nodding along when you were talking about skills in particular and investment as well. But what should they be doing or thinking about in order to help shape the direction of economic policy? Well, organisations like yours and the chambers, others, FSB and CBI and others are incredibly important, but so are your direct voices. And getting the balance right is really challenging. One of the things that is most challenging for me is how I get sort of authentic frontline voices. And I used to run a umbrella body myself. I ran Akivo, which is the umbrella body for the voluntary sector, representing chief executives of voluntary sector organisations. Now, we had 2,000 leaders there, so you can't represent all of their voices, but what you do is harness it, and then you form campaigning points. So I know the strengths and weaknesses of this system. So yes, it's very easy for government just to take the voices of campaigning bodies and representative bodies, but they too will have a perspective and certain priorities which don't always align with government's priorities or the things that government can do easily. So they're getting the balance right of having enough frontline voices and understanding the collective voice of sectors is a tough one. The other thing I'm very aware of is that there are people who are running very big companies who have my mobile number, and they'll just message just simply because they're employing so many people in the country, or their economic activity is so important to a region or another. The chief executive of JLR, for example, we had to be in direct touch, and I needed to be able to be the weekends and so forth. He needed to be able to pick up the phone and speak to me directly. But small businesses don't have my mobile number. So I understand how there is a frustration that the voice of certain bits of the economy gets straight through to people like me, and other bits don't. Now, firstly, I'm saying it because I want to acknowledge the problem and the challenge that I have. And secondly, I want to say it because I'm not able to say entirely what the solution is, or even if that is a solvable problem. But I do get out and try and meet as many people who are in hospitality, who are doing sort of micro startups, who are self-employed. It's quite often working for one company, doing programming work and so forth, so that those voices can be heard. And I hope when you see the budget that's coming up, I'm not giving any hints about what's going to be in it or not going to be in it, I promise you. So when I say I hope, I'm hoping alongside you that you see, as you did in the previous one, who we are protecting when we take hard decisions, and where increasingly we'll be investing in going forward. And I hope that you will recognise that voices of all parts of the economy are being heard.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I mean, you've alluded to many of the areas where you are driving forward this change and really kind of focusing on the needs of businesses, and that's apparently what you shared there. Thank you for that. And thank you for coming and sort of engaging today as well and sharing this vision with our members.
It's nice to be here. It's nice that nobody's commenting on the fact I'm wearing jeans.
Yeah, well, it's Friday.
And people in Brighton Hove get the memo. They get the dress memo.
Yeah. Well, no, it's good. I mean, you're channeling your tech bro.
That's what you have. I can't say that anymore, though. So I will tell you this though. When the reshuffle happened 4 weeks ago today, I was in Hove, and I'd worked in the morning, and Stella here, who was from my office, making sure she gets me down here working hard. And then I had the afternoon free, and I was convinced that when I saw the reshuffle there was rumours it was going to happen. And you all think that we know these things in advance. We don't. And you all think we know what jobs we're going to get in advance, and we don't. And so it's all very strange. And then the reshuffle started happening, and I was so convinced that I wasn't going to be touched that I went back and I thought, great, I've got a couple of hours and I can go to the gym and be healthy. So I was getting changed my gym clothes, and then I heard that I was going to be impacted. And so then Wes Streeting calls and says, what's going on? And I said, I think Liz has got DSID. So, I'm obviously on the move. And he said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm in my gym kit. And Wes just said, for God's sake, Pete, put some clothes on and get to London. and get to London. So I'm walking to the train station, and I get this call, and it's this Downing Street switchboard that says, could you hold for the Prime Minister, please? And by this point, I'm just at that point before Brighton Station. I just had to cross the road to go into the station. So I'm standing there, I'm waiting. And then just at that moment, the Keir comes on the phone. Somebody just walks over to me and says, "Oh God, Peter, I've been dying to talk to you about this AI app that I've created." And I'm sort of going, I'm so sorry. And then Keir's sort of like talking to me, and this person stands there and just waits for me to finish on the phone. So I'm sort of like trying to sort of get some space. Anyway, so Keir then says what job I've got. We talk about it a little bit, and he says, "Could you come to Downing Street so we can just go into detail, because there's a lot I want to talk to you about." So I said, yeah. He said, "Where am I?" I said, "I'm just outside Brighton Station. I'll be up there in about an hour and a half." And he said, Great. He said, "I'll see you in a bit." So I took my phone away, and he said, "I heard this, Pete. I said, "Yeah?" And he said, "You will put a suit on, won't you?"
And luckily, you weren't in the gym kit today, but next time...
Exactly, yeah.
American presidents had that sort of things for a period in the 90s where they'd go running and take their meetings running. So maybe that's the next evolution.
Yeah, but I'm not doing it if I start doing it for performative reasons, then that's different, and people sort of see it differently. I think, being yourself in this job, I had my first time when I was 35, and I just got a job as a special advisor. I'd finished doing my doctorate here at Sussex, and I'd set a business up locally with my best friend, And then I got a call about would I be a policy advisor in Downing Street. Didn't think in a million years I would get it. Anyway, I got it, and then they asked if I'd start that day. So I left my office here in Brighton, and I got to the train station. I put some smart trousers on and a shirt, and I got to Victoria Station, and I thought, God, I don't have a tie, so I bought a tie in Tie Rack. And that was the first time that I bought a tie. And I was 35. I've been an aid worker before that, and then a student, and I worked at the body shop, and they didn't care what you wore back then there. So anyway, so I've sort of just grown comfortable in this, and Keir has been amazing at it. I mean, Keir really just doesn't care as long as you just really do the work. And then at those moments where you have to show respect through dress, you're doing a bit. So I'm showing respect to the Brighton audience by fitting in here today.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't expect to be getting sartorial kind of guidance and tips from people.
It's not guidance. Don't follow me. Yeah.
But no, I think that's great. And, you know, it's fascinating to hear so much of your story. We haven't had time to dive into it, but you've shared so much of your personal journey, you know, starting here in the university and coming up through some of those roles. So that's fascinating. And I'm hoping one day a book might be kind of on the cards. I'd love to hear more about that.
Oh, well, you'll be first to buy it then. Now I know I've got a customer.
Yeah, there you go. And many here, I'm sure, as well, right? But Secretary of State, Peter Carl, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been fantastic. Thank you.